Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the latest in the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 lineup. This is the M&P in 10mm. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. You'll find a link that you can sign up for Big Daddy Unlimited. They actually have things in stock and usually at a lower price than other places. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. This particular one happens to be the compact, but there's really not a whole lot of difference between the compact and the full size between these two. Full size is a little bit longer. This has a 4-inch barrel and the full size has a 4.6-inch barrel. Grips are about the same. It comes with two of these 15-round magazines. And they're nice, well-constructed, solid magazines, and they fit in good and flush and kind of follow the curvature. Now this is truly a 3-finger grip, pretty much on anybody's hand. At the moment, there's no other diversity of magazines available. I imagine that'll change over time. It comes with two, and Smith & Wesson is usually pretty good about getting their magazines out there and available, so you should soon be able to get more magazines. And it comes with 4 of these different wraparound grips. So you take this one off and you can replace it with your choice of the 4 that come with it. One will come pre-installed on the gun and the other 3 will just be in the box. You'll notice this is a optics ready. It's got the plate on the top of it. And Smith & Wesson is being smart. They're doing what Glock and several of the others do, and they're providing the plates. So this has a diversity of plates that will work with pretty much any of the red dots that are popular out there right now. Happily, they're not following the direction of Walther and a few others that are either you get one free plate via mail and you have to wait for it, or other delays. So for the most part, if you've got a red dot picked out, you take this out of the box, it's ready to go. All variants of it that I'm aware of at the moment are optics ready. You have this one here, which is the compact. This one unfortunately does have the thumb safety. As of the making of the video, that's pretty much the only version you can get your hands on. But there is actually a version without, and then the full size comes with and without the thumb safety. Give it time, all of the variants will be out there and they'll be available. As a general rule, I prefer not to have thumb safeties on striker-fired guns like this. They have enough other safeties, but right now, this is all I could get my hands on. If you were to just look at this quickly and not look at the slide, you would mistake this for any of the other M&Ps. It's basically the same. So if you're used to the M&P line, you've got your fish scale serrations front and rear. You've got a 3-slot Picatinny rail. All of the controls are basically the same as they are. The takedown is the same. You can use the internal sear disconnect or you can pull the trigger, your choice. So overall, if you've got other M&Ps and you're used to them, you're going to be used to this one with one fundamental difference. Notice the trigger is different. Now this is a factory trigger. I haven't touched this. This is just the way I took it out of the box. But they've put their flatty trigger on it. And this isn't probably the first time you've actually seen this particular new trigger from Smith & Wesson. You've likely seen it on the Shield Plus. Same basic design of the trigger that's coming out, and this is the 9mm Shield Plus. So I think you're going to start to see this trigger on other guns in their lineup. I think they might be moving away from that hinge trigger that is functional. It does perform the safety function, but a lot of people don't like it. It's kind of got a weird feel. So let's talk about the trigger on this, since we're on that subject. So the toggle goes away very easily, and the trigger just starts to take up. There is a little more take up than in the Shield, and it's got a little bit of a gritty point right there. So as I'm taking it up, there's a slight increase in tension, and then it kind of snaps back to the wall. I don't know if that'll go away over time, but that is a little bit off. Now I'm sitting on the wall. Little bit of a wall to pull through. It's light and it breaks nicely. There is a bit of an over travel built into the frame. Reset is decent. It's not the shortest reset I've ever had, but it's not all the way out by any stretch of the imagination. And when it resets, you hear it click, you can feel it in your finger, and you are right on the wall. And then as I pull back, again, you pull through a short wall, it breaks nicely, and it does seem to be a very consistent trigger. So the only thing I'd like to see gone is this grit right here, which may work itself out or may be able to be polished out. That didn't affect me at the range. That grit kind of disappeared of the noise and feel and recoil and everything else. That grit kind of disappeared. but when you're sitting here at the table in a quiet environment, you can kind of pick up on it. Overall, I do like the gun. It was relatively easy to shoot well. It did seem to have more felt recoil than other 10 millimeters that are out right now. And that's one note. 10 millimeters becoming more popular. Glock, which this is a Glock 20, for the longest time pretty much owned the 10 millimeter market. And you'll see that the shield is I'm sorry, not the shield, but the M&P is roughly the size of the Glock and holds the same 15 rounds that the Glock holds. So Glock is definitely giving up their dominance of the 10 millimeter market, and with Smith & Wesson and Springfield coming in on their XDM series with a large diversity of other calibers available, so the M&P is available in pretty much all the popular calibers. So now you've got the same level of same manual of arms. I got a 9 millimeter I carry, I take this hunting, etc., etc. So I am happy to see other manufacturers, including Smith & Wesson, get into the 10 millimeter game. In the short term, it might make 10 millimeter harder to get, but in the long term, if it's popular, manufacturers will crank up and start making more of it. It does have nice sights. They're a bright 3-dot sight with a good spacing on them, so the sights are quite easy to use. They're a little bit elevated, and the purpose behind that, of course, is they're meant to be able to co-witness with a red dot, so that if you have a red dot on here and it fails, you could back up to your sights without having to touch anything. And you will see it does have an ambidextrous slide stop slide release on this side, along with the safety for those that have the manual thumb safety. It's a well-designed pistol. Now let's talk about the dimensions and the other specs. This one is 7.2 inches long front to back. It's 5.6 inches tall with the flush magazine in it. And that's, of course, before putting a red dot on it. A red dot would raise it further above that. And it's 1.3 inches thick. Of course, the safety ears kind of stick out a little bit to the side. But if you have the version without the safety, you won't have those. It's 28.5 ounces, and that's not super heavy, but it's not super light. But again, in 10 millimeter, you kind of want a little bit of weight. 10 millimeter's got a stout recoil. This didn't handle recoil quite as well as some of the others. You notice the recoil more in this. But 10 millimeter has a pleasant recoil. It's kind of a solid push, similar to 45, but with a little bit more behind it. But you did tend to notice the recoil a little more. The sandpaper texture keeps it in your hand. On its own, it's not going to tear you up. But under the recoil of 10 millimeter, you tended to notice it a little bit. But I didn't end up with any abrasion on my hands or anything like that, so it was not by any stretch unpleasant. A little bit of serration on the magazine release so you can easily catch it, and a little bit of serration here on the slide stop slide release, which is well formed. It's got a nice little hump to catch it, but it's kind of out of the way, and you're going to have a hard time getting it accidentally, so you aren't likely to lock this back unintentionally while you're shooting. We did have 2 functional issues with this while we were shooting, and I'm going to hope that they'll go away through break-in period. Had a couple failure to feeds, where it would partially feed the round and then kind of hang up partway through with the slide stuck open about like that, and the round partway in the chamber. They were easily cleared. They happened a couple times. And once we had the last round of the magazine fly out the ejection port after firing. So there was one more round in the mag, you fired the one in the pipe, the gun cycled, it should have loaded that last round into the pipe, but instead it shot it out of the top. And this was, of course, with range ammo, CCI, and regular just range ammo. I'm not going to count this out right away. It's not unusual to have those types of weirdnesses when a gun's brand new. I'll give it a little try, a little bit of time to see if that resolves itself. But it was a pleasure to shoot. It was relatively easy to shoot well. And despite feeling the recoil a little bit more, it was very controllable. So it is a good gun to have at the range. The frame, the slide, and the barrel on this are all stainless steel. And they've got what they call their Armornite finish on it, which is a really nice black, kind of a nice shiny finish. But it's not glossy, so it doesn't create glare. But it does look nice. It doesn't look flat or dry looking like some finishes do. With an MSRP of $654, it's actually quite competitive in the market. So living with this and taking care of it is easy. So to take it down, you lock it back, of course verify that it's clear, make sure there's no magazine in it, flip this arm down. Now you can either reach in there, back in here there's a little lever you can push down that's a sear disconnect, maybe a little hard to see it. See that yellowish lever right there by my fingernail? You can push that down and that'll disengage the sear, or you can let the slide forward till it's basically in battery and pull the trigger to release the sear. Either will work, but once you do that, it slides right apart. Now, something I'm going to point out in a second, but before I point that out, overall it's well manufactured. It's got kind of short little rails at the front, but they're thick and robust. Nice large heavy locking block. Good sized rails at the back. You have your fire control group, and here's a better look at that lever. So if you push this lever down, it disengages the sear. The important thing to note, if you use this lever, when you go to put it back together, the trigger will be dead till you flip it back up. Good news is when you put a magazine in, it'll flip it up if you forget. Now there is one issue on this gun, and I don't know for sure if it was this way when I got it or if it did it at the range, but you see that line right there, right here on the locking block. That's actually not a crack or a welt or anything, that's a spring. So that's the tail end of a spring that is the other end of this spring right here, which operates the slide stop slide release. And that tail is supposed to be up under the locking block. So I'm going to fix that, but I can't swear whether it came this way from the manufacturer or if that spring worked its way out under recoil when I was operating. But I'm going to put it back, and then of course I'll take it back to the range, and if it stays put, then I'm good. But Smith & Wesson's quality control is usually better than that. So as a general rule, when you get a Smith & Wesson, any of these M&P lines, they tend to be right from the beginning. So I'm a little surprised at that. That's not what I expected to see. Now here is the slide assembly. Notice it has a steel guide rod. Nice robust. It's a wafer spring. Now unfortunately they chose to paint it with this orangish paint. Normally that's not a big deal, except this stuff's going absolutely everywhere. So I can't wait till it wears off, or I may actually take a little bit of time to clean it off. This is probably to differentiate this recoil spring from some of the other calibers when they're putting these together and going through the parts bin. So here's the barrel, and again, as I mentioned, this is a 4-inch barrel. It's well machined and nice and smooth. See, everything's well machined in there. Of course, it's conventional rifling. Nice crisp rifling. A machine polished feed ramp, nice and wide, and it does appear to have pretty good chamber support, which can be important if you get into a little bit of the hotter 10 millimeters. And you can see here there's a witness hole so that you can look down through the top of the barrel when the gun is closed and see if there's anything in the pipe. Now you maybe see some orangish specks on this. That's not rust, that's just that paint from that recoil spring going absolutely everywhere. And you'll see some of it here up front. I deliberately didn't take the time to clean this out of here so I could have it for the video. You can see how much of a mess it's making. Some of it's there. I don't believe that's going to hurt the function. And of course, once it wears off and you've cleaned it off a few times, it'll go away. But when I first took it apart, that stuff was absolutely everywhere. Beyond that, it's well manufactured, well machined, nice and solid. Here's your drop safety plunger and the sear. And nice long loading ramp. So, typical Smith & Wesson, they do a good job with this M&P line, especially the 2.0 series. They really have stepped up the game when they got into the M2.0 and the capabilities of it. So reassembling it is relatively easy. You just line it up. Make sure that this lever is down in that position. Lock it back, flip the lever. Now if you didn't use that disconnect, then the trigger is ready to go and you can test it. If you did, you'd either need to flip it up with it locked back or stick a magazine in and pull it out. But overall, very easy to maintain. And of course the trigger worked when I put it back together because I didn't touch that lever. I had used the trigger to disengage the sear to disassemble it. Totally your choice. You can do it either way. Both ways are completely functional. So if you're looking for a 10 millimeter, and you're a Smith & Wesson person who likes the other M&P line, new entry, and I do believe some of that little bit of issues I had in the very beginning will resolve themselves. If not, if there's a design issue, Smith & Wesson really gets on those types of things fast. So I'm really truly not going to worry about that. I don't necessarily know if there's a particular reason why you would pick the full size or the compact one over the other. They're roughly the same size. I chose the compact because that's what I could get my hands on. With 10 millimeter, a little bit of barrel length can help. 10 millimeter benefits from additional length, so that extra 0.6 might get you a little bit more velocity. The gun just kind of has a little of an extension here, but overall there's probably not a big difference between one versus the other. Couple of last details before we wrap up. I'll show you the business end of it so you can see what the muzzle looks like. The sights are dovetailed, and you do not lose your rear sight when you take the plate off to put an optic on it. And again, it is actually raised a little bit to co-wetness. And one note, after you've cleaned this and you're kind of polishing it up, don't use a paper towel. This surface here will, and you can see a little bit where I didn't get it all, it just shreds a paper towel. And so you even in that final wipe down, you want to use a cloth or something that won't tear apart. But I'm not worried about it bothering me because it's actually pretty smooth, but it does have a taste for paper towels. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us the thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and now Getter. Pretty much everywhere. Thank you.